Welcome to Sound and Fury. I am Eric Wilford Watson.
And I'm Hugh Frank, and what I've felt and what I've known never shine through in what I've shown.
Today we're going to talk about all things Fallout. I just watched the entire Fallout TV show. You've watched a little bit of Fallout. I've played the games. You've never really played the games, but you're sort of familiar with how Bethesda games work. So Let's get into it. You watched, I believe, the first episode?
I saw the first two, actually. Managed to sneak those in.
I did watch the entire thing, so do you mind if I spoil things? Or do you want me to keep this mostly spoiler-free? Okay.
Let's keep it spoiler-free. It's actually really fun.
So I will not spoil the show for you, but I will talk about my impressions of the rest of the show, about what you're going to experience, but I'll try not to spoil the actual plot points. But what I'm curious about is, I'm a guy who's played the video games. I've never played Fallout 1 and 2 because that's not my type of game, but I've watched YouTube videos. I'm familiar with the concept and the overall tone of those games. But I played all the Bethesda ones. I played Fallout 3, 4, 76. Fallout New Vegas is probably my favorite, although that was made outside of Bethesda. But very familiar with the games. As somebody who's never played the games, I'm curious how that comes because I see all the video game stuff in there, and I'm like, oh, look at that! They got that thing. Oh, look at that! There's, they're throwing me all these little bones, and I'm like, is this going to make any sense to somebody who's never played the game before? So I guess that's my question for you.
Well, that's a very good question. Now, you can't play games without being familiar with some of the concepts of Fallout. So the things that I knew about were the powered armor. I knew the dog was going to be significant somehow. I had seen the cowboy guy maybe in some kind of advertising. The other thing, being familiar with Bethesda games, mainly Starfield, is a lot of people, when they were talking about Starfield, were mentioning, hey, could we have this thing that we have in the Fallout series? So I knew there was a lot of similarities. One of them is in Starfield, there is no powered armor. So part of those general discussions was, hey, powered armor. So, and it's on the cover of like the different games, and at least one of them has powered armor on there. It's kind of like Elementals from BattleTech. So there's a few things that I kind of knew generally of, and I knew it was a post-apocalyptic future, hence the name Fallout.
And you can probably just import knowledge if somebody who's played a lot of games, that if you haven't played that specific game, you still know kind of video game logic.
Yeah, and it makes sense. What I didn't know is now, obviously the ghoul is, he'd be considered an NPC. I don't know if the not pod dweller, what do they call them?
The Vault Dweller.
The Vault Dweller. If the Vault Dweller girl, I don't know if she would be the main character, or if the person with the powered armor would be considered the main character. I guess from an adventure standpoint, it looks like, hey, you got to leave your vault to go rescue your dad. That seems like an adventure hook. So seeing it through her eyes mostly makes sense that she's kind of the PC of the player character of the game, so to speak. But it was nice to go into it and watch it as a show and not really have any preconceived expectations of what I was going to see. So that was pretty refreshing. Honestly, now I want to go play the game.
Right. I have to say that as somebody who has played the crap out of the games, if this was a video game, it would be the Vault Dweller would be the main character, the character you play. None of these characters are actually in the video games. This is a completely separate story. None of these characters have been seen in any of the video games, but what is consistent is the universe. You've never seen that cowboy guy, but you've seen ghouls. Ghouls are a very big part of the game. There's feral ghouls, and then there's the ghouls that are just like people, only they have no nose.
Okay.
Basically, the radiation sickness has the side effect of making them immortal to basically anything. But
that's handy.
Eventually you might go feral and just become a zombie.
Okay. I can see that.
But yeah, every single Fallout game basically is you start in a vault, you get out of the vault for one reason or another, depending upon the game. In Fallout New Vegas, you're trying to somebody shoots you and you have to go track down some criminal thing. And but the whole point is you're one character and you encounter all these other things. My biggest drawback of the series is actually the changing first person of the storytelling. We go from Vault Dweller to the Ghoul to the dude who's in the Brotherhood of Steel, and then we go back to the people that are still in the vault. So there's too many first-person characters. I think if it was me, maybe it's just what I expected, but if it was me making the show, I would have focused on one character who interacts with all of these other factions, who interacts with all of these other things, and then we learn about it through her eyes. But it jumps from point of view character to point of view character, which is not really consistent with how the game works. But I don't. But this isn't a video game either. This is a TV show.
For crying out loud, it's just a TV show.
So is it? You know, that's probably the biggest difference. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would have preferred the show to be mainly through the one character, through one protagonist, but the show decided for creative reasons not to do that, which I guess it works, but I still would have preferred, you know, because it's such a faithful adaptation of the game in other areas, would have been nice to have that single player experience, so to speak.
Yeah, that's true. In game terms, though, you can you know, spend a lot of time looking for clues and finding things that kind of tell you, like, you know, hey, look out for this ghoul coming up. You know, there can be a lot more foreshadowing and things. I think you gotta speed that along and just allow the audience to have that narrative. But
did you get to the point where they have the shootout in Philly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, which I thought was interesting was just Philly, Philly. I
Was what?
thought it was going to be Philadelphia, but no, just Philly.
The reason I bring that up is that's probably the most video gamey moment of the entire series, where when they fire weaponry, it follows the projectile in slow motion as it enters the body, and then the person explodes. Yeah, yes. They do exactly that. In the game there's a fighting system called VATS, where you can select, you know, go into that VAT system and it'll like highlight, do you want to aim for the head, do you want to aim for the torso? It'll give you like percentages of how likely it is to hit that. And so you can try to customize your attacks that way. That works a little bit different in each of the games, but that is so much, that shootout sequence there is so much like the video game. And that whole environment, the whole city of Philly, is perfect, because in every one of the video games, you come across towns like that, where they have the merchants, you have the characters coming up to you saying, can you help me find my uncle who disappeared, or whatever random side quest.
I used to be an adventurer like you, until I took an arrow to the knee.
Which was also a Bethesda game, so exactly.
Right. No, it kind of has that feel to it, now that you mention it, that it does have that, you know, all kinds of, because what do you do in any role-playing game when you get into town? You sell your stuff, you buy more stuff, so that makes sense. It's like, oh, I'm a PC, so here I am, ready for my next adventure. Let me see where the plot train goes. So yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think this constitutes a spoiler, but there's one point where somebody's backpack gets dumped out and all kinds of junk falls out. In the video game, you can collect random junk, like pencils and bottles and desk fans and whatnot. And you can later I don't think you can in Fallout 3, but in Fallout 4 and 76, you can scrap items and, you know, improve your weaponry, improve your armor, and stuff like that. And the various junk that you break down will give you those components. But the fact that they have the actual junk, the actual same kind of pieces you'd collect in the video game, there's so much attention to detail that I swear you could watch the entire series and freeze frame each shot, and you're going to be able to point out things that were really specific in the video game. So as far as the look and the feel and being in the same canonical universe, they nailed it.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I like that attention to detail. I like the retro futuristic. You know, there's a couple things about the medical technology that seemed a little bit too advanced. You know, she stapled her skin back together after she got stabbed, and then suddenly she was healed. The dog, I was very happy to see that the dog didn't die. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the first 2 episodes. You know,
yeah, they have this horrifying looking syringe. They stick it into the dog, and then all of a sudden the dog is absolutely fine.
Right. Right.
Which is the video game logic. In the video game, you pick up and collect those stim packs, and if you're really severely injured, you can inject yourself or inject your. Sometimes you can pair with an NPC to follow you, or in Fallout 76, you can have teammates and whatnot. But a stim pack is basically it brings you your health back. Video game logic brought onto the screen, basically.
Okay, all right. Well, that yeah, I guess if it's video game logic, that makes perfect sense now. So yeah, I mean, name a game where you can't just have some kind of item and get yourself back up, restore your health. Otherwise, the game would be not very fun. Yeah.
Which is an interesting creative choice for a TV show. They make it in the canon of the video game, so all the rules of the video game have to apply to a TV show. And I think they did a really good job of balancing it. You kind of have to suspend disbelief a little bit because real-world rules don't matter. But then again, when you have 200-year-old ghouls with no nose and cowboy hats, you kind of are already suspending disbelief a little bit.
Right. But it's at least it's explainable, right? It's not necessarily plausible. But there have been mutations to the wolves around Chernobyl. They're able to withstand radioactivity. There's some other stuff. They're just now really starting to get into studying them. So who knows, right? What radiation really does. In the short term, it kills, but in the long term, whatever survives can carry on genes that maybe that they wouldn't have otherwise carried on, etc. There's a two-headed cow in there. I thought was pretty cool.
Those are all over the video.
I don't know if there's a lot of those in the game. Yeah, it makes it makes sense. It reminded me of the three-eyed fish from.
I don't think this counts as spoiler territory, but there's a government, the New California Republic, and the flag for the New California Republic is exactly the same as the California flag, except the bear on it has two heads.
That makes sense. So it's Zaphod Bear Bulbrox.
That is a deep cut nerd joke right there.
Yes, it is. And I just made that up on the spot.
How do you feel about the power armor?
Oh my God. Okay, so two things about it. One is, like everybody else in the world, yes, I would love to have power armor. And two, that they had the, I can't think of his name, but anyway, the character that was he was the page and then he became the knight. He had a really cool name, but I don't remember it. But anyway, so for him to not know how to use the power armor, but kind of have some rudimentary, would have to make it somewhat easy to use. But for him to kind of be able to learn how to do it with a little bit of a montage, but still be not rusty, but still not know all of the ins and outs. But also to just be having fun and laughing and just doing the stuff. Like if I ever strapped on power armor for the first time, unless I was under some kind of direct military order to be serious, I would just be joking around and having a good time and throwing shit across the ocean and doing all the stuff he does. So like it was very, again, we're talking about suspending disbelief, but the human behavior, you have to have the correct human behavior. That's exactly the right thing. It's like, just having fun playing with his armor. And then of course now he's got kind of a complex. He's like walking around, halt, citizen, unhand that woman, So, so now he thinks he's all powerful because he's got the suit, which we find out he's not. But yeah, powered armor is awesome. I'm going to make some in my basement tomorrow.
And you're right. You have to suspend a lot of disbelief in the show, but you don't have to do it as much in a video game because you understand that it's all computer programmed. You don't have to film anything. Really, your imagination is the limit and the technology. But we're at the point where if you can imagine it, somebody can program it into a video game. A couple little nitpicks. Nothing is ever that green in Fallout. And I understand you have to go to a physical location, but I don't remember there being too many lush forests in the Fallout games. But other than little nitpicky stuff like that, it nails the tone so well. And I love that they even bring the music from the game at some points.
Yeah. It's hard to generate trees in video games. Lots of trees. It can be very heavily on your what am I looking for? Basically on your GPU, rendering all those trees can be very resource heavy. So there's not too many games where there's a lot of trees in the game, just because of that. So for better or worse.
And in the games, you can become part of the Brotherhood of Steel should you choose to do so, or you can oppose them with other factions. It really is. You've played Skyrim. You know, there's these different competing factions and camps. based on your choices, you can, go one way or the other. There's a lot of moral gray. Like the Ghoul character has his goals in this show. He does a lot of terrible things, but you still can kind of empathize with him a little bit. Does some does more terrible things later, so you might lose some of that. But I also like the jumping back and forth between that character before and after the war. So it kind of grounds it a little bit. And you mentioned earlier the retrofuturism. That is a big part of the game too. And I think they nail that really well. You kind of makes you wonder how a future can kind of go backwards like that.
Yeah. And everything is
like the kids are watching this 18-inch black and white TV,
Right.
And that's the future.
Right. Yeah, I get the impression that maybe nuclear fusion was discovered very early on in the 50s or something, and that maybe changed the course of, if you think about a multiverse, everything's a freaking multiverse now. So not as if they're going to bridge and go to our reality or something, but somewhere along the history, it bridged from, we discovered fusion within a few years of unleashing fission, and then, now we have unlimited power, and so now you have people fighting over that, and the, you'd still have the 50s style, but then you'd have all this tech because, where you have unlimited power, you have
great responsibility,
a lot bigger responsibility, unlimited power. So, but ultimately, we're limited by the amount of energy we can capture. That's really what is our limitation. So.
The cars look like they're from the 50s, but they also look like a retrofuturistic version. Like if you gave somebody in the 50s a sketch pad and say, draw a car from 100 years from now, they'd probably draw what you see in the Fallout game. And what I find interesting is I don't think they ever specifically mentioned that they're not gas powered, but when you find the ruins of a gas station, the signs that show the price per gallon doesn't say it says coolant class A, like $199 per gallon, coolant class C, $149 per gallon or something like that. So they hint that there's some technology that's more advanced. They just don't quite go into what that is exactly.
Right.
Which I think is kind of cool.
That makes sense. It is. So all in all, I'm really liking it so far. Can't wait to keep on watching. Definitely recommend it to anybody. You don't have to be familiar with the game. But to your point, you keep on seeing these video game tie-ins in there. It's like, oh yeah, I know what this is. So I'm going to go about it the other way. And once I've watched the show, I'm probably going to have to check out the game. Maybe now that you've taken your first delve into the MMORPG world, maybe I'll join you on Fallout 76 one of these days.
I think Fallout 4 is a superior game so far. Apparently, Fallout 76 had a lot of glitchy, a lot of bugs. Bethesda kind of has a reputation for that, and Fallout 76 really had sort of a catastrophic launch. But the game's been around for a long time, and I just started playing it not that long ago. So I haven't really run into any bugs yet, except for there was one character that to move to the story along, you have to follow her to the basement. Well, I went to the basement first, and she just stood at the bottom of the stairwell and didn't proceed, and I couldn't talk to her because she didn't go into the room because I went in the room first. So I had to leave the room, the whole building, and come back and have it reload, and then I could have the conversation. So that's the only bug I ran into so far, but that's minor. But just the layout of the world seems better in Fallout 4. There's more stuff closer together that you can interact with. There's more characters that you can talk to that have interesting things to say. I just like the world better. Fallout 76 just seems like there's too much space between things. There's not as many camps where you can go sell your stuff. Right. There's not and random other players showing up doing dumb things. I just turn around and there's another character just slaughtering one of those two-headed cows. I'm like, okay, just move along. I just kind of ignore them as if they were NPCs. I did some team-up stuff. People.
Cows turn themselves inside out every day.
But I just think Fallout 4 is a better game, but I might only think that because I've played Fallout 4 for 100,000 million hours, and I haven't quite played Fallout 76 as much. So it could just be I'm so used to Fallout 3 and 4 that I just like them better because I'm used to them. But Fallout 76 is still pretty good, especially I think now that they've had enough time to work out all the bugs, and there's some expansion packs. I got the Atlantic City expansion pack.
Cool.
So they there's more world than was originally there. So yeah, if you actually do start playing Fallout, let me know. I'd be very curious to have another conversation with you once that happens.
Yeah, part 2 coming soon.
Yep. So with that, I think this is a good place to end the show. If you want to support the channel and you want to be somebody that makes me happy, you can purchase my book, Becoming Quincy or Judas Kissed. Both of them are available on
Shameless plug.
both of them are available on Amazon.com. That would be very much appreciated. And if you like and subscribe, that would make me smile.
Click the button down right there.